Hey everybody, welcome to the Fire It Up with CJ show. Today we are continuing our back to school series, and we have a local expert from Seattle, Julie Metzger, who is talking about great conversations, which is part of the work that she does about having great conversations with your kids. So welcome, Julie.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Yeah, it's a crazy time of year when school begins. It just feels like chaos ensuing. All the transitions that we go through, and what I thought we could do is talk about the transition into high school, which is a pretty big juncture. And even within high school, it seems like they're different. Freshman and sophomore year are different than junior and senior year. So I wanted to get your expert advice on what we can expect during those years in terms of both the social and emotional development of our kids.
As a teacher in the community, we always kind of look at, well, we're constantly looking at developmental space. And so we always think of kind of fourth and fifth graders, sixth graders kind of in their own little bubble, kind of going either way, then seventh and eighth,
Mm-hmm.
and then kind of ninth, 10th.
Right.
And there's this giant kind of, I don't even know what to call it, but then 11th, 12th. That there's quite a difference developmentally between ninth, 10th, especially at the beginning of the school year,
Mm-hmm.
and then 11th, 12th.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at behaviors of kids and decision making that they do, you can see that reflected in their decision making, that gap in high schools between kind of ninth, 10th. And again, it really, even kids change so much developmentally within a year. You see a difference. Every parent and teacher sees a difference between September ninth, 10th
Mm-hmm.
and June ninth, 10th. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's,
interesting. So even within each of those years, so
yeah.
what when you group the ninth and tenth year together, what is it that you see or the common characteristics? And I know it will vary, but what are generalized characteristics of that grade, beginning of the year and then June?
I think that if you were to say to a ninth grader, oh, any high risk behavior, like in high school, what might happen is you would be asked to ride in a car and the driver would have been drinking. A ninth grader is still concrete enough to go, I'm never going to put myself in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
That's far away from any experience that I've ever had, nor can I ever picture that.
Mm-hmm.
And then by the time you're in 10th grade, if spring of 10th grade year, you might say, I still have never experienced that, but it's completely possible for me to picture that. And that giant kind of awareness of the world makes it very different in terms of how you approach that decision. A ninth grader who, especially in September, would think, I've never experienced that, nor will I ever put
Right.
myself in that situation, is a very concrete thinker.
Right.
And by the spring of your 10th grade year, you have this idea of that's possible. That stresses me out, or maybe they'll act cynically about that, or maybe they'll sort of act cool about it, like, well, I just handle that, but it's more of a wake to the possibility of something being outside the realm of my experience.
Okay, and then what happens in 11th? So that it's the class of actions are like risky behavior, whether that driving with someone drunk is risky behavior. So what happens in 11th and 12th grade?
Well, when you look at national data, so it's always challenging to look at data, right?
Right.
Because if I said to you, CJ, 10% of kids jump rope in middle school, you'd go, well, that's hardly worth me considering. But if your kid is the national champion, it's 100% for you,
Right.
right? So what's hard about national data is I can tell you what that data shows in terms of risk behavior, but if your child is 100% in it, it's 100% for you. It's not 10%, right?
Right.
And that's true if you're the 10th grader. If I said 20% of high school kids smoke cigarettes and your kid is at one of the 20%, it's 100% for them.
Right.
So what's helpful is just to kind of look, if you start at the 40,000 foot level and go, well, so what does go on in high school
Right.
across the nation?
Right.
There is a sharp increase between 10th grade and 11th grade, and in between sophomore and junior year. And some of that has to do with where they are in the culture, what we expect from them in the culture, and what how they see themselves. But it also has to do a little bit with or a lot with kind of where their brains are. And I always tell juniors in high school, you probably have the least amount of branches on the tree of your brain in junior and high school.
Wow.
So you're working with the least amount of material that you'll probably ever work with outside of being a newborn. So they aren't always. They have some of the biggest branches that they will ever develop as a junior in high school. If you've been studying Latin, your Latin branch could be quite large in as a junior in high school. But we also treat juniors in high school as more adult, and so they find themselves in more adult situations. They have more freedom and responsibility at the same time, and then they're just experimenting. So that whole combination of things kind of tips the scale that way. And they become, all of adolescence is really asking the question, is it true what they told me at my dining room table?
Right.
And when you're a junior in high school, you are out in the world looking kind of figuratively back, at the dining room table going, so is it true if I have sex, I actually get pregnant? Is it true if I smoke a cigarette, I actually get cancer? Is it true what they told me at my dining room table? And if we've had interesting enough conversations with our kids, we will have kind of grown with them to help them see that it isn't necessarily a black and white thing. It's a very gray world. And very astute juniors in high school understand how to work the grayness of it.
Okay, so let me go back to what you said before. So their neural networks, their neural pathways are being formed. So the abstract thinking, I guess, is that what's happening?
So here's how I like to describe it.
Yeah.
Your brain is like a tree.
Right.
And when you're born to about 6th grade, the job of your brain is to put on as many branches as possible.
Okay.
So you've learned how to tie a shoe, you've learned how to speak French, you've learned how to ride a bike. That you're putting on an enormous number of branches. And in a healthy family and in a healthy school, that is just an explosion of branches.
Right.
What happens in about 6th grade through your teenage years is that you actually have those branches pruned away. And what gets pruned away are the branches you're no longer using or not using well.
Right.
So the branches that grow the best and the fastest and with the most vigor are the ones that you are concentrating on. So if you're a golfer or if you're doing math problems, those are the branches that get big. Likewise, what puts it so as those branches prune, then you can essentially say that the brain of a middle school and high school student is literally becoming in front of you the brain of their adult brain.
Okay, got it.
Doesn't mean that at 57 I can't learn a new skill or build another branch. That gets very big. But every professional basketball player and cellist, they've actually been doing that work since middle school, high school, if not before. Right. That's your biggest branches are the ones you've spent the most amount of time and concentration and expertise and practice on. A junior in high school, then, if you look at that kind of model, is working with the least number of branches. It's kind of in a scenario. A fully formed tree really starts to be recognized on an MRI at about a 23-year-old girl and a 25-year-old boy, and then they continue to, your tree continues to build upon the strength of the tree that's established by then.
Okay, got it. So during 9th and 10th, so what happens during so your brain is actually getting pruned to have bigger branches, but actually thicker. I don't know, what is it? Thicker branches.
Yeah,
pruning out some other
branches.
And then what I'm also hearing is that during that time, risk taking takes place because part of what I understand is that you're trying to be out on your own. So unless you take risks and figure out how to be on your own, you're never really going to be able to launch, so to speak.
Right.
And so they're kind of looking back and going, now, really? My parents said this and not so much. Like I'm looking at this and not so much true.
Sure. And I'm working with situations where I'm out on my own and and comparing the world that I'm seeing out in my world compared to the world that has been described for me, and asking the question, is that really the way the world works?
Right.
And how learning how to define for myself some of my own truths. And in the end, honestly, our other local fantastic expert, Laura Kastner, says, statistically, actually, the apple rarely falls far from the tree. Your kids generally follow your kind of general value set, often a faith set or a rhythm and a lifestyle set that is not so very different from the one they were raised in. But during adolescence and early 20s, it's a real opportunity to reflect and experiment and choose within the parameters of the life that they have to kind of reestablish or reform or recommit to those ideas.
Interesting. So it starts kind of at the June of 10th grade, and then it just continues. Well, when does it start?
It's actually been going on all along.
Okay.
I mean, starting as a fresh piece of paper in the 10th grade. I think what happens is that as kids grow, there are really amazing, resilient, mature kids that are fifth graders. There are really interesting, mature people that take longer to establish some of the root system and of their tree. Some of that certainly gets affected by an illness or poverty, or anything that would pause an experience for yourself to allow the tree to kind of be fully engaged and growing. But at the same time, all kids are kind of building this tree, and there's certain temperament styles that we bring to it, certain opportunities that get brought to our plate, and those all affect the growth of that tree. What I think happens, though, is that we have a more concrete thinking brain when we're younger, and we develop more abstract thought as we get older, and that very much impacts sort of your view of the world. When we work with sixth graders, I love challenging a sixth grade class with a scenario where they feel out of sorts and all alone in a situation. And those sixth graders say the inevitable thing: I would never do that. My dad would get mad.
Right.
And I can bring a sixth grader to tears. They're so sure of the fact they would never, ever do something. They're so responsible.
Right.
And so they're so assured of the truth of the dining room table. It's powerful. You can take those same exact kids, though, even 2 years later, even 8th and 9th grade, and you can challenge them with the exact same scenario, and they see right away, well, I might lose a friend if I say yes then.
Right.
I might put at risk the relationship with my dad. I might actually get hurt. That perspective of time beyond this moment, others beyond myself, that's a more gray world. And that's a good thing, right? That's a good thing. And sometimes parents see that as a time where they need to clamp down on their kids, when really it's an opportunity, especially as your kids are exploring in mostly, if you feel like they're mostly in a safe space, for an opportunity to explore outside their comfort zone to see what happens. And I think when we give them experiences that allow their decision-making branches to mature, right? And then they get a chance to repeat those over and over and over again, in the same way that they practice the cello and that cello branch gets giant. If we give our kids an opportunity to practice decision-making and be responsible and feel the impact of their decision and to live with the consequence, we've done some great work at building branches that offer them confidence.
Okay, so I think I get the dilemma.
Every teacher in high school makes a bad decision.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that our best work happens when we've allowed kids all along the way to kind of practice this idea of what would happen if I blah, blah, blah. And for a kindergartner, that's what if I don't return my library book? What if I forget my PE clothes? Um, for a sixth grader, it might be, what if I don't invite CJ to my birthday party? What happens? What happens when I
Right.
leave someone out?
Right.
What happens when I gossip? What happens when I lie?
Mhm.
Because some of that is a trying something on and then going, oh, that did not go well for me.
Right.
Bigger branch. Some of the biggest branches we have in our brains are from these moments, right? I
Hmm.
mean, we can all look back and go, you know what? I'm never going to do that again.
Right.
I learned that when I was a junior in high school.
Right.
A lot of good lessons back
No, but
there.
a lot of our adult experiences, like when I coach people and I'm like, when did that start? It goes back to junior high when a girl threw gum in my hair, and I learned that I have to be really smart and on top of things. Where I'm like, oh, that's where it starts.
You know, it's so powerful when you think of the role of a parent in a situation like that. If you think of this kind of urge for us to be kind of a mother bear, to protect, right? It's such a natural place. I don't want to feel my child to feel discomfort or embarrassment or being alone
Hmm.
or it's so powerful
I know.
that you think you're doing a good thing by helping them, by taking over, by making the decision yourself, or by managing the situation so that it doesn't occur.
Hmm.
Yet, we've not done anything about building their branch on that topic.
Hmm.
We've only kind of reinforced our own.
Right.
I have three friends that called me up one day and said, "Hey, could we take you out to coffee?"
Yes.
And I just knew, something was
Yes,
up. I said,
something
"Hey,
is up.
sure, what's up?" And they said they all admitted they're all professional people. Two attorneys, one healthcare provider, really amazing people, phenomenal parents. And they all admitted to pretty much rewriting a paper of their freshman in college. And they had admitted it to each other, and they were kind of asking me what I thought. And I thought this is a great example of, we get so practiced at kind of helping and in holding up and hoping it goes well, that we've taken it right into the classroom in a college that we're in a different city than we're even living,
Right.
of people that actually need to learn how to write a paper.
Right.
And they knew it, and it was like they just did it.
Right.
It was so easy. And I
Right.
go, yeah, you're probably really good at writing papers. I would have, I mean, it happens so
Right.
fast. And I think they walked away from that conversation just after having admitted that, like, but that's that. I'm not doing that again. But
Right.
it's a funny thing. At what point do you allow your kids to kind of fall on their face and get a D?
Right. Okay. So the contrast would have been, I'm calling you before, or my 11th grader is telling me, okay, actually, this is my 11th grader said I don't want to take the ACT in October, even though we're scheduled. And I was like, okay, honey. And I'm thinking, you should take it. But I'm
Mm.
thinking, well, why don't you want to take it? And then he's like explained everything. And then I listened to him. I'm like, no, those are all valid reasons. Actually, just take it in December or whenever you. I said, when do you want
Yeah.
to take it? And he said, I want to take it December. I'm like, okay. And I said, if you feel like that's the best thing for you, I mean, you know who you are and you can make a decision like that. Um, but that was only because I had just finished reading a parenting book. Now, had
Well, but I love it's so great. It's so true because we want it's not a bad thing, or we're not bad people. It's just so hard to turn that off of thinking, I know the answer here, and they need to hear it. When really there are other answers. That was a great example of that. There are
yeah,
really other answers,
yeah,
and by listening to that, instead of just coming at it with your own thing, you allowed a different response. And it would have been interesting if your 11th grader would have said, I'm not taking it at all,
oh,
or I'm not in college.
he said that too.
Yeah.
And I said, well, Yeah, I can understand why you would say that.
Yeah.
And here, I'll show you the statistics. That these statistics don't necessarily mean that they're relevant for you, but mom and dad's experience, and this is our experience, have said that if you don't, then these are the consequences. And I guess if you accept the consequences, that's what's going to happen. And
Yeah.
so, and and the
And the
key thing.
consequences include all the way up to, if you're in this home and you aren't in college, then our expectations are, there's so many ways to continue to build the story. One of my favorite all-time research projects looked at decision making on kids, and they had three qualities of a good decision maker. One was you can act autonomously within a crowd. I can stand alone. Even if you and your friends are gossiping and I want to be your friend, I could stand alone and go, that's not for me.
Right.
That's hard work. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, that's hard work.
Yes.
Yeah. Second, that you could have perspective of time beyond this moment, others beyond yourself. Also easy to picture that, but in a situation like you're describing there, the ACT seems like a hassle. I'm kind of busy. It doesn't seem right. I don't believe in testing, whatever it is. But when you play it all out, it's hard to look beyond this moment or the pain of this moment or the anxiety of failure of this moment. It's just really hard. And then the third idea of great decision maker is impulse control, the ability to not act on every feeling that I have, that not to get rid of my own anxiety, do I just cancel the test? Not to get rid of my anxiety of fitting in, I just gossip, right? That idea of managing my feelings even in a discomfort place. And I think lots of times we could leave our kids in a kind of uncomfortable place for a little bit longer than we do. And that's whether they're 4 or whether they're 24. And whether they're 4, it's maybe a shorter amount of discomfort place because they're still learning it and they're learning still how to trust the world. And at 24, because generally you hope that you've built a safe, interesting place and environment, you can kind of leave them in an uncomfortable place for a while.
Yeah. That's interesting, and that's so hard because we just want to wipe their noses and their butts. It's like, I've been doing this for years.
Yes.
I must wipe your nose and your butt. This is what I'm supposed to do.
Right.
That's hard. But I think actually what you did is you broke down like 3 different kind of, okay, that is the role. Because I think it's hard because you read parenting books like, you're supposed to be a coach. And you're like, okay, and I'm actually a coach. Like, that's my job.
Right, you're professional.
And I still don't know what they mean. It's like, am I supposed to coach my kid like you're a client? Like, I'm not sure. But what I heard you say were 3 things. One is to kind of look at the perspective. Okay, you're deciding this now. Let's actually, in coaching language, you'd be doing future pacing. So what happens if you choose this? What happens if you do this? Let's actually help you do some future pacing so that you can feel in your body, how do you feel if this happens? So I'm hearing the future pacing and kind of perspective, or how do you think you're going to look back when you're, 80, and all those kind of perspective shifts. That's one thing. And then I heard the other thing is allowing them to be in their pain without going in and scooping them up and slapping like a little smiley face on it, which I think is what parents want to do. Well, here's another way of looking at it. It's like,
well, I think part of it is, so let's go to a really simple 4th grade situation. Yeah. Someone is having a birthday party and they need to decide who to invite. And they don't want to invite so-and-so. And so you allow this moment to say, someone says, well, I'm not going to invite so-and-so. And you can kind of say, well, how do you think that'll play out? That's an interesting choice. And, that you allow space and a pause there. It's really easy, especially when we're in a hurry and we already know we don't want that solution set as a parent, and that we can even remember. It's so crazy what gets drawn up about your own 4th grade experience, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I was left out, that's never going to happen here, kind of thing. Whatever that is. And it could be anything about parenting. Sometimes is just your own healing of your own 4th grade moment, whatever that is. But as a coach, right, to me, it allows space and silence that says, huh. And then you let your 4th grader go, when they say it out loud, then they get a chance to sit in it versus us quickly, moving them on or telling them the 10 reasons why you think that you have a better idea. And I think that it's just allowing space and sitting in silence for a little bit longer than we tend to do in this world and culture. And I think I have to say, as a stereotype, that I'm just going to claim that moms are really vulnerable to filling the space with words a lot. And I think, again, good intentions, and oftentimes in part of the world that we're in, they're the ones kind of managing the next thing. So they're already kind of wanting to move on.
Right.
And I'm not sure we would ever do that to our friends. I would never call you and you say, I've got something on my mind, I'm thinking about this or that, and me going, well, I wouldn't just fill it with my answer for you. I would allow you to go, I'd go, tell me more about that. I don't know that I get that. Or I would say, help me understand that better.
Right.
And then I would allow some space because you're my adult friend. But we tend to jump right in.
It's funny because, as I said, I'm a coach. So with clients, I actually am a coach. I know how to do this.
Yeah.
With kids, I'm like, okay, what do you think? Okay, here's what I think. Here's the 10 reasons. These are the 10 consequences, all of which are dire. Do what I want, And it's like I just have to. And I'm a little bit better than that, but that's happening. That's my internal dialogue, and I'm like kind of ratchet myself. I have to like ratchet myself back, like ratchet it back, CJ, ratchet it back, because
we all do. And part of it is somebody said to me a long time ago, it's holding your kids capable, and I love that line. I love that line because you're literally looking at your child with these words in your mind. What an interesting, capable person. I look forward to hearing what else is on your mind. Instead of, let me fill up your mind with my capable, amazing idea.
I'm just laughing because, as skilled as I am as a coach, you still make mistakes because it's different when you put your, like, there's the coach hat that someone can pay me and I'm there and doing all the things that you're talking about. And then when put your mom hat on, all those things that you just described, the fears that you had. My son just took the ACT, and my dad just drilled into me, like, this is the test of your life, So he's taking it for the first time. I could have sworn I was going to have a heart attack, while he was taking the test. My husband's like, you need to look into that. And I was like, no, I have been looking into it this whole week because I realized I'm bringing so much of my own baggage, and I'm trying like heck to be boundaried so I don't blur into my son's story because there's no reason he should have this story, but I have it with my own childhood as, a kind of tiger mom, dad kind of parenting. But it's so interesting because all those things, you have to check yourself all the time. And I think it's like, it's almost like if you wanted to do anything, it's tuning in going, what's really happening here? I mean, I have this favorite new thing that I do. I yelled at, I lose my cool.
Yeah.
Caden, and then I go back and go, God, I am such a jerk. And then I go back and I'm like, okay, what is really happening? That was so poorly executed. What is happening? What is really happening for you? What is it that you're really fearful that would create that kind of response?
Yeah. And it is a fear thing.
Oh, it's always a fear thing.
Almost always when I lose my cool, what I have to uncover is what I'm afraid of. And I think that's true with our kids. So when our kids are flying at us and we tend to either fly back, right, or exit stage left, I think it's a more interesting thing if we can pause before we fly back in to go and wonder what they're afraid of. Because it's almost always true for us, right? That you've just said it perfectly. And I also, makes me laugh about the testing thing too, because we even bring a generational perspective to it around testing, right? Our kids have been in Seattle, and Seattle questions testing. In a big way, in a big public, interesting way. There's always this thing of testing.
Right.
Testing is incorrect, or testing should be challenged.
Right.
So why would we be surprised that our kids would go, I don't see the big thing about the test? It's
Right.
just funny how we bring, though, from another time, this idea of something. And then our kids come at it from a different perspective that may or may not be valid or true. But same with us, right? Sometimes we're just like, we're held back by the 70s, or whether we're held back from the 80s. It's so true, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like, okay, so for video games, like that's a perfect one where I'm like, get off, you're gonna like I was never on video games. Why are you on video games all the time? Can't you talk to your friends? Can't you have them over to talk? And then, and then I have that conversation in my head before I say anything. And then I ratchet it down like, yeah, but there's probably some reason. So yesterday, my son, we asked him, he has this day off because it's Rosh Hashanah, but we said, so, I noticed that you didn't come up and I'm wondering why. Because in my head, I was like, because when we ask you a question, on Skype, we expect you to come up right away. I have this whole dialogue in my head scripted out. And he said, oh, I didn't get your message. I'm checking Skype and I didn't check your message. And I thought, well, that just blows my whole argument. And then I said, you know what? I've noticed that you've been playing computers a lot. And I honestly am not. I've been struggling here trying to figure out why and what the benefits are. And like, because I can kind of see that's a blur of like, you're hanging out with friends, talking, which I think is like, that's a good thing. Then you're playing games and having fun is a good thing. Like he's taking all honors classes. He needs to blow off some steam. And I'm like, and hey, you could actually be hanging out smoking pot or walking around the streets. And I guess if these are the evils I have to choose, playing computer games is not so bad. So I really don't know what's going on. But it took so that's something where I'm like, that's bad for your brain. And I've read all these studies and it says this is awful and I just stop doing it. Like I just want to tell them to stop doing it. And you should be working on your extracurriculars and all that time. You should be taking your ACT tests and working on your extracurriculars and figuring out your life and then I was like, why does he even have to do that? You're probably going to live to 100. You have like 100 years to figure this out.
Yeah.
You don't have to figure out any of this stuff.
You can actually... There's a kind of a reverse scenario that I can think of here where in the 70s and the 80s, our understanding of drinking and being in high school was more of a rite of passage.
Right.
That we considered that a little bit boys will be boys thing or girls will be girls, and that drinking was sort of the kind of thing that maybe you'd kind of know the kids are downstairs drinking and you might think to yourself, well, that's their high school, whatever. Well, we know so much more about the effect of alcohol on brains now. So in a way, it's just that exact scenario, except we know more, right? And I think when we know more, we have sort of another redo in our heads about helping our kids reframe a traditional cultural response to a certain behavior. I mean, who knows? It's just such an interesting thing to kind of participate alongside our kids as they navigate what the world tells them about a video game or drinking or smoking pot is another fantastic example, especially in this day and age where we're newly legalizing marijuana and the mixed messages that we have about that, both from bringing again back from the 70s and 80s in our own experience, being under a different set of rules and a different understanding, and then what does that mean to our own kids now? It's all very interesting. I think bottom line, we're hoping that our kids can be interesting, compassionate, resilient people to pursue their passions and do it well and stay healthy. And we're not guaranteed any of that. And I think that they also generally want the same thing. Sometimes, though, their perspective of time beyond this moment and others beyond themselves and being autonomous and not acting on every feeling is puts them at risk for acting impulsively or not putting it together for the long term. And those kinds of situations, the more we can put our kids in situations where they kind of have to live within a fairly safe place around some of those painful things, gives them skills to navigate out of bad or worse situations and more challenging situations as they get older.
Yeah.
It means so much to me that you're listening to the show. I would love your support in any way by giving me comments below, or to subscribe to the show, or share the show with friends. Thank you again for your support. Love and blessings.